Good morning, everybody. This is Robin Ayub from the Localization Fireside Chat, and welcome to another episode of recording. Today, I am honored to be joined by Liz Elting, legendary in our business, legendary on her own, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us, Liz. For those who don't know Liz, I'm just going to do a little bit of introduction, then I'll ask her to tell her story. It's very, very impressive, very significant to our industry and how this individual have transformed everything that touched. So let's go with the bit of an introduction and we'll go from there. Liz Elting is a founder and CEO of Elizabeth Elting Foundation, entrepreneur, business leader, best-selling author, and I can't wait to dig into the book, Dream Big and Win, and also a philanthropist, feminist. She loves driving women's issues and bring them to the surface in our society. Very admirable. And a mother. And, raising a family and doing all this, it's not a small challenge. So, Liz, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you being with us. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Robin, for having me here. Honored to be here. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to ask you, Liz, what is your story? On this channel, everybody's got a story. So we're very intrigued. Everybody tells their story in a different ways. How did you get here? How did you start? How did you get here? What's your story?
Sure. And thank you for asking. And again, I'm thrilled to be here. This is my home, the localization industry. So I, growing up, was fortunate to get to live in 5 countries, living, studying, working in 5 countries by the time I was 21. Actually, by the time I graduated from high school, I had studied 4 languages. So that was amazing. So basically, just to elaborate a little bit on that, when I was born in New York, a little bit north of New York City. And then when I was 8 and 9, I had the opportunity to live in Portugal, 2 different parts of Portugal, which was fabulous. And then when I was 10, I moved to Toronto, where I ended up living.
Wow.
I know you're from
hometown.
Your home. Yes. And I love Toronto. And that's really where I spent my formative years. I was there from age 10 to age 17. And as I was saying, I was able to study 4 languages. I studied Portuguese, first Portuguese in Portugal, and then French, Spanish, and Latin in high school. And I ended up coming back to the US for college. I went in Connecticut and I majored in modern languages. So I, like so many of us in our industry, adore languages. And what's interesting about it, I was torn in college on whether I should major in languages, because as much as I loved them and they were my passion and my greatest skill at the time, I thought, what on earth am I going to do with languages? And I know a lot of us back in the day felt that way. The thing to do was to be a professor or a teacher if you studied languages. And I remember I called up my dad and I said, I don't know what to do. It was my second year of college and I had to make a decision on a major. I said, what do I do? This is not practical. Should I major in something else? And he said, no, just follow your passion and the rest will take care of itself. So fortunately, I got to major in languages. Anyway, fast forward to during college when I lived in junior year in Spain, spent the year in Cordoba, Spain, which was fabulous, and then lived in Venezuela after college, Caracas. Then when I was 21, moved to New York. And that's when I was fortunate to find what was at the time the world's largest translation company. It was about 90 people. This was in 1987, so way back in the day. And I thought, wow, what a dream. I can combine my love for languages with business. What could be better? So I started at that company. First, I was in production, and then I was able to move into sales. So I got to see both sides. I got to really touch both sides, and I absolutely loved the industry. But I thought it could be done better. This was between 1987 and 1990. And back then, for those of us who were working back then, it was enough to be a translation company. The company that I was at basically had 2 deliverables that we would give work back in, WordPerfect and Microsoft Word. That was it. And if we were translating a document that was 10 pages, we would have to tell the client that'll take a week. And then, if we made mistakes, we would charge the client. So, and then we only had a couple offices. We had a few offices at this company. And this was the world's leading translation company at the time. So I thought it can be done faster. It can be done better as far as quality. It can be done better as far as service. We can offer more deliverables, and we can have an office in every major city around the world. So I kept that idea in my head. And then after 3 years, I decided to go to business school because I thought, I love this industry, but I don't know what I'm going to do at this company. It was a relatively flat organization, 90 people, as I said. And I thought, perhaps I can be promoted once, maybe even twice, but not sure really where I can go. And I think it can be done better. So went back to school, got my MBA from NYU, thinking I would do something more practical. And then I talk about this in my book, so I don't need to get into it right now, but I very briefly tried out finance after graduating. And the reason I did that is I thought I had loved the language industry, but I needed to make some money. I had no money. Um, no money. So I went and got a job in the proprietary trading division of a French bank. And I thought that was a great way to combine something practical, finance, with my love for French. Learned very quickly that was not for me, neither the culture nor the industry. So I thought, life is short. Even if I can work at a company with a different culture, I'm never going to love finance the way I love the language industry. So anyway, I ended up quitting after only 6 weeks. And that's when we started TransPerfect. And
Okay.
at the time, and this was in 1992, and for
Mhm.
those of you who are in the industry, you may remember there were actually at the time thousands of translation companies out there. Most of them were started and run by linguists who
That's
are,
right.
of course, enormously talented, much more talented than I was, because while I studied languages, I was never at that level. I
Mhm.
had a working knowledge. I wasn't at the level any of our translators ever were. I could never translate. I quality controlled, but the point is they were started and run by translators. So the translators were so busy doing the translations or doing language work on the projects that they couldn't scale their companies. So I thought, this is my opportunity. We're going to be pioneers in this industry. We're going to do it faster. We're going to have a full range of services and offices in every major city around the world, and we're going to become the world's largest and premier company. And that's basically my story. And we started TransPerfect out of that NYU Business School dorm room. And I feel like I should stop here because I've gone on and on and
No,
on.
no, no, that's fine. You're doing very well.
Thank
I love this. To be honest with you, you're such a unique story and sort of line up with everybody that I've listened to. We've recorded about 50 episodes so far. So we've talked to about 50 decision makers in the industry, and they all have a unique something, a trigger that drove them into the idea to, flourish, to be born, to an idea to be born somewhere, and then to make it into a business, to turn it into a business. Which brings me to one of the first thing I read in your. I was just browsing through your book pretty quickly this morning before our call, and one of the things is, as you mentioned, you took a job in finance, and you questioned, was this ethical? And
Yes, you're right. No, integrity really is my biggest core value. And I didn't know much about finance, but yes, I was concerned about that because
Mhm.
that really integrity is my biggest priority. I was taught that honesty is the only policy, and I kind of felt like some of the things they were doing might not be, both as far as how they were trading and making money. And that was an issue to me. And then, of course, how
Right.
I was being treated as a woman, which, I talk about
That's right.
in
Yeah, that's
chapter
right.
1 of my book as well. But
Mhm.
yes, so I thought this culture is not for me. It was an integrity issue. It definitely was the way I was treated. And then, of course, I mentioned the industry was not for me
Of course.
anyway. And I thought, if I'm not going to change this culture, but if I start my own company, I can create my dream culture. If I'm not
That's
happy in
right.
this sandbox, I can go play in another sandbox. And that was a big part of my goal with TransPerfect, to create my dream culture and to be basically an employer of choice in our industry, and ideally any industry, and to put production and sales on the same team. That's a big one,
Right.
because that was
That's
one
right.
other thing that I felt was lacking at my prior translation company, or
That's right.
the one I had
And
worked.
you know what, you were reading my mind, because one of the podcasts actually a little podcast I've recorded on my own. It was around alignment between production and sales in order for us to grow companies, right?
Yeah,
A lot of people come to me with the idea, oh, we want to grow the company, we want to take it to the next level. First question, is, or first request would be, is, do you know good salespeople? I said, before you get into the sales discussion, we may need to have another discussion. He said, what? He said, well, may want to go back to your production team and ask the question: are they okay with growth? Are they excited about growth? Are they on board with the growth idea? Because the last thing you want to do is go bring customers in, and then your production team says, I'm not ready for this. And for one reason or another, the customers leave the door. So it's not really about finding new opportunities. It's about aligning all together in one team that we got to serve customers.
Oh, absolutely. And that was definitely a huge part of my goal with TransPerfect, because you're right, the salespeople wanted the business, but there were all kinds of issues on the production side when it was brought in. So I thought, yes, absolutely, align incentives between those two huge departments and the other departments as well. So everybody is incentivized for the company to grow, incentivized financially for sure, and in every other way that they do better when the company grows, as far as opportunity, perks,
Mm-hmm.
promotions, um,
Absolutely.
everything. So
Absolutely. I remember one year, years ago, I was working for a tech company, small tech company, maybe 35 employees out of Ottawa. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ottawa. You've been to Ottawa?
I've not been, but definitely familiar.
Yeah, you're familiar with Ottawa. So I was working for this company, and they had like 35 employees at the time. I'm talking like early 90s. And I remember the incentive process they had, and everybody was incentivized on new customers, on customers in general, from
Amazing.
the secretary or the receptionist that answers the phone to every individual in that company was being incentivized on obtaining customers.
Amazing. That's how it should be. That's perfect, right? Yeah. So everybody wants those new customers, and then of course they all need to be incentivized to keep those customers. But absolutely, and whether it's through perks, promotions, learning opportunities,
Absolutely.
yes, just travel, whatever it is that motivates them. Absolutely.
So moving a little bit to the book and Dream Big and Win, which I've heard a lot about it. I've read about it. I've read it, little skim through it. Just to be honest with you, with my schedule, I only had a chance to download it like 48 hours ago, and I was able to browse through and get some stuff in there. Like the before we get into the book itself, why the book?
That's a great question, and I love that question. When we started TransPerfect, I remember it well. There we were in the NYU Business School dorm room, which is where we started the company. And I had just gotten my MBA in finance and international business, but I had not taken any entrepreneurship courses, any marketing courses, any management courses, which in retrospect, that would have been great if I had. So I was reading every business book I could get my hands on back then, leadership books, all of them. And I didn't find anything quite like my book. So it's the book I wished I had had when I started TransPerfect and over the years as we were running the company. So that's why I wrote the book. And I tried to make it a little more fun, more like a beach read business book, more vulnerable, authentic, personal, rather than a straight business book, which there are more of those out there and they can be a little dry. So that was my goal. And I tried to make it funny, add some jokes in there
That's
too.
right.
So just to make it a fast read. But I think, hopefully it's a fast read for people and it's interesting and that there's some good business lessons as well.
Hey, look, I mean, assume, being on the Forbes list of richest self-made women in the United States. Congratulations on that status, by the way.
Yeah.
Not many people can say that. That's quite the achievement. You're not, doing the book to, gain revenue out of the book. You're doing the book to help others.
That's right.
And support others. Of course, there's cost to producing books, so people have to pay for it. You're not going to put it for free somewhere. So no, I appreciate that. And just going through leafing through, I see a lot of wisdoms, and they're in bold letters in the pages, which is kind of make you focus on those. And they're like a lot of, you can take a lot away. You can take a lot from the book itself in terms of learnings, and what not to do in some cases and what to do in some cases and how to do it better. And I appreciate like the openness in the way you've shared the ideas, at least from the first few pages that I've read, few chapters that I've read. It's pretty cool. And one chapter, it's pretty interesting, and I want to zoom in on. You called it the balance, balancing things. You had so many. Like, I mean, I just read your bio. You had so many things on the go, and the balance chapter, sort of like everybody's struggling with right now, and in everywhere we go, and everybody I talk to is that multi things that we have to, in whatever environment, as a person, as a human being, you're dealing with today. There's many things that people are dealing with. How did you manage this? And you concluded a lot of lessons out of it that you put them in a book.
I did. And yes, it's tough to balance now, and it was tough to balance back then. I feel like now it's harder than it was in some ways back then because we all have email. We all can communicate 24/7. Everybody can work from home now so it more might be expected as far as 24/7 hours, which is obviously unreasonable, untenable, not something anyone should do. So that's the negative now. But the positive now is there are much better family leave policies at companies. Maternity leave, paternity leave, I guess parental leave. And that's very important, certainly when you have children. And that it's critical. That's critical. And the other thing for women that's wonderful is there are so many women's groups out there, so many networking groups, support groups, that we didn't have anything like that in the
That's what I was going to say. Like, I mean, you built a company. This is the world's largest company at the time, and you've had so much responsibilities. You still have kids to bring up and family to take care of.
Yes.
So how, this is where the rubber hits the road, kind of, so to speak, as to how do you pull it all together and don't let any of this fall apart, because they're all important.
No, you're right. And that's sort of the concept of you're juggling. We're all juggling things, and but some of the balls are glass balls, right? And you don't want any of the glass balls to fall. A couple other balls, a bunch of other balls will fall, but don't drop the glass balls. So trying to figure out what is super important. What must I pay attention to at a given moment? Because the whole time you're running a company or in any position at a company, and bringing up kids, it's a juggling act. So I think it's hard for everyone. It was certainly challenging for me. I mean, as far as some of the lessons I learned, I learned that you must have a great backup to take over for you when you're out on parental leave. Someone you completely trust, someone who can do your job. I mean, succession planning, whether you have kids or not, you need it for every position in your company. And I remember that was a big issue to me at TransPerfect. I used to talk about it a lot. I used to say, okay, do we have this for every position? But certainly when you go through being a parent, because it was tough in the early days. I did not take any maternity leave. We didn't have the policy, and I didn't have a backup for myself. So that was one thing I did wrong. And again, you need succession planning in any case. I mean, if you have a health issue or someone suddenly quits, whatever it is. Okay. The other thing is great family leave policies are critical. I mean, there are a number of lessons I learned, but the other thing I learned as a parent is make sure you don't just kind of work 24/7, but not as intensely, but instead compartmentalize. Come in at whatever time you come into work, assuming you come into work, or turn on your computer and start work from home, whatever the time is, 8, 8:30, 9, and then be super intense during that time and make it all about results, and don't get distracted. And then, of course, have your turn off time or your walk out the door time, whatever it is, 5, 5:30, 6, 6:30, 7, I don't know. And then make it all about everything outside of work. Your family, your kids, of course. And the same thing on weekends. And if you can take all complete weekends off, wonderful, do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just about being super intense, because people who don't have families or don't have a lot going on outside of work that they want to pursue, they might just stretch out the day. But that's no way to live. It's no way for you, for any of us to live. And it's also it's not a way for your employees to want to work at your company. They will not be motivated if they see you doing that, if they see your boss doing that. They will think, wow, I'm not sure I want to stay at this company if that's what I'm going to have to do as I go through my life, my parenting time, and everything else. So I think it's very motivational to compartmentalize both for yourself and your team.
That's right. Now, the title of the book, it feels to me that is describing you. Like, I'm looking at the book and I'm looking at the title, I'm looking at you, I'm listening to you, and it sounds like it's describing you to the T. You dreamt big, you won big. And so the question is from everybody who's listening to this is, can I do this? Can I duplicate or replicate what Liz Elting has done in her life? Especially for those entrepreneurs or for those individuals who are not yet entrepreneurs, but they do have this spirit somewhere percolating and they have some ideas. And I see some people like they have ideas and they're probably afraid or they have some apprehension on, you know, taking the leap of faith and jumping forward. You've done this. What is your advice? How do you advise to those individual who's got something they want to achieve, something bigger? It feels in their heart. It's bigger than they currently doing, but they want to do something big. What's your advice?
Right. Well, I say if I can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it, because I was never walking around thinking I can accomplish more than anybody else. I had plenty of insecurities, so much that went wrong. I was definitely, underconfident about this, nervous about this. I was afraid. I was afraid when I abandoned that job, when I resigned from that job. Even it was after only 6 weeks. I had just gotten my MBA, and I thought, I'm just throwing that in the garbage and starting from nothing out of a dorm room. And I recommend people do something like that if they have the desire and, of course, an idea. And the idea, as I say, does not have to be anything entirely new. You do not confuse being an entrepreneur with being an inventor. You can still be wildly successful without creating anything new. It's just more look at what's being done, look at the gap that's out there, and what could be done differently and better, and then go for it. And I think it's a risk not to do it if it's on your mind, if it's in your heart. And so I say take the risk and go for it. And you will learn, you will meet people through the experience, and it's so worthwhile. It really is. And, I just say, go for it. If I could do it, you can too.
I really love the idea. Like, you don't need to be an inventor, an entrepreneur, or somebody who has got that desire. They don't need to invent a brand new product. You're absolutely correct, Liz, because a lot of people think that I'm going to create that unique product that's going to make me, a millionaire next morning, which is not necessarily true. And especially with products nowadays, people can replicate products. You're unique for the next 24 hours. And after that, somebody else creates something bigger. So it's more of an idea of, taking something and come up with solution to solve a problem, I'm assuming, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I give the example of Fred Smith creating FedEx. At the time, there certainly were overnight delivery services even, but he had ideas on doing it better, faster, more service oriented, and he did it differently. Or Steve Jobs, when he invented or came up with the iPhone, there was the BlackBerry out there, certainly, and there were even other smartphones, but those smartphones couldn't do all the things the iPhone could do. So it was taking an idea that was already out there in some way and refining it and doing it better. And then, of course, after you start your company, you will need to continue to innovate and pivot based on what's going on in the world, based on technology and the times. And it's important to do that. And you might even find what your original idea was not the perfect idea, and you have to pivot, not because of what's going on in the world, but more something that you just identified because you started doing business and you saw
Right.
client feedback. Whatever it is, that's okay. It's more about getting out there and working on building that client base and making them raving fans of you and your company and figuring out what they want and then refining it. That's okay. It's more about just going and doing, because I think sometimes people think I need that perfect idea to get started. And you need to more get in there, get started, and perfect it as you go. It doesn't mean you can't go in there with any idea. Of course, you need some idea to get started, but it doesn't have to be what ultimately takes you to the top.
That's right. Now, switching gear a little bit, I'm cognizant of the time, and I've got so many topics. I feel like I want to invite you for another discussion because there are so many areas I would like to cover with you. And I'm trying to hit everything today on certain depth, not complete all the way, but just a little bit. So from your perspective now, you're not involved, I'm assuming, in the localization industry anymore. You're a philanthropist. You're on the outside of the industry looking in. Could you give us from your vantage point, what is your read on the industry, and having so much depth experience in not too distant past here, you just still to some extent relatively fresh in your mind.
It's fresh in my mind, but obviously I want to be useful to you and this group here. I mean I did sell in 2018, so now it's been five and almost 5 and 3/4 years. So obviously there have been big changes, and certainly technology had come in a big way by 2018, but obvious, and even AI was there, and that had greatly modified our business. But I know now we're in a different place, and I understand what's happened. I mean, I don't understand nearly as well as all of you in the industry what's happened with AI in even the last year as far as how it affects the localization business. So the answer is I'm hedging what I'm saying just because I have less knowledge than so many, I mean, basically people in the industry. But like all industries, AI is here to stay,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of things it will change about the localization industry. But in the end, it's about having the best people and providing the best service and continually innovating and
Mhm.
anticipating clients' needs before they know they have them. So it's figuring all of that out, and then also delivering on their needs when they've expressed that they need them through your inquiring. So it's about being very close to your clients and close to your employees who are interacting with your clients, and figuring out how to continually innovate. I mean, so sorry, I know I'm not giving
No,
anything.
it's fine. I mean, I
I
get
just
I get
feel
your
like I'm,
position. Don't worry. But I do feel like there's another question I have to ask on that same
yeah,
topic. I feel like you're telling me that, and I don't know. I'm just
yeah.
reading the tea leaves here. I feel like you're saying, I sold at an opportune time in 2018. I feel like you're saying that.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not on the inside anymore at
No,
all,
no, I know.
as you know. So it's hard for me to say it was the opportune time for me, and at the time, I didn't even know it because I thought I was going to stay in it because my heart and soul was in it. It was my third child, or maybe it was the first of my three children. I have two other actual human babies, but it was my first. It was my child. It was my second family, but it was good for me personally, and now I'm doing things I love, like talking about business and entrepreneurship and philanthropy. But I don't know if I should say that just because, again, I'm not on the inside. But I mean, you could speak better about when you think the ideal time is in the industry, because you have a better sense of how it's going, on the inside than I do.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier, and not just necessarily for the localization industry, but any industry you mentioned earlier, is anticipating customers' needs, issues, problems to solve
Yes.
before they even know they have it. And
Yes.
I've seen, I'm a technologist by background, so I've seen like the telecom industry heydays and low days, and I've seen the dot com bust in 2000, in 2000, 1999, 2000,
Yes.
2001. And I've seen people like, doing, and the printing industry later on. So, a lot of those industries, when they are pressured in terms of revenue, in terms of profitability, what I've seen them do is revenue protection game. So I'll protect my revenue and I just put my hands in the sand and wait for the innovation. What I feel is, and this is me talking here, I just feel like this industry, and like the other industries, innovation was forced upon them from the outside. Other industries says enough. You're either going to give me the solutions that I need, or I'm going to go invent them myself. And I keep saying this on this channel. There's this example, like it's a case here. People talk about it all the time. This YouTube influencer, I don't want to promote him. He's got like something like millions of followers on YouTube, and he was doing the localization of his YouTube movies using videos using a localization companies of some sort. I don't know. And then he got fed up with the process, and then he went and opened his own AI company that does the exact solution.
Mm.
So, case in point, what you were saying earlier, you either come up as an industry with, or as a company, as an entrepreneur with solutions to your customers, or the customer's going to be going buying the solution somewhere else.
No, that's so true. I love what you're saying, and that relates to the other uh, view I have on it. Certainly, yes, you need to be continually innovating and anticipating your clients' needs and in constant communication about their needs. And related to that, because AI is here to stay and it's just improving, that what we can offer as business people is the human element, the being close to our clients and really making them feel like we work within their company and coming up understanding their company's needs in a very deep specific way because they're our client, then talking to them about their future plans and how
That's
they
right.
intend to grow, and then think, okay, so this is what we're going to do for you. And then of course that client feels like they're your only client, and then to some degree you can take that and generalize that across your other
Yeah.
clients, but
Replicate it.
replicate it exactly. But I think, the important thing is AI still, it's not close to be doing what a human can do. And people need that human touch. And I mean, I've felt it my entire career in other ways. It was why at TransPerfect, I never wanted, when clients called up, when we had thousands of employees, I wanted to make sure a human being answered the phone. It was why when we sent out letters, I wanted a human signature, not a stamped signature. Now I understand now maybe DocuSign, but still anything that gives that human feeling. And then, being close to them and making them feel like you are their best friend, their family,
That's right.
and you care about them and their needs, and you constantly strategize what can make them more successful. It is so key, and that human touch is so critical with AI. I mean, it was before, but certainly it's more critical than ever now because so many people have the technology, including even the client can create it. So then you come up with something else for them. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
yeah.
Now, one of the big topic I want to allow some time to cover, which is also everywhere in your book, which is very very important topic, is and you talk about it quite a bit in your book, is women's issues in general, like equal pay, opportunity, etc. And part of your philanthropy is this particular issue, which is your championing, which is congratulations, by the way. We all need to be supportive of that. Just asking the question regarding the women's issue, if you don't mind elaborating a little bit on your work on that topic, would be great.
Sure. So, yes, I mean, I definitely just experienced issues with being a woman when I briefly tried out finance for 6 weeks after business school. And then, even along the way in my journey at TransPerfect, whether I was experiencing issues myself or I saw other women experiencing issues. And I thought, once I sold, now is my moment to focus on this. And I am such a believer in supporting women. And so I have a foundation called the Elizabeth Elting Foundation, and our mission is actually to support and empower women and people from marginalized communities. And
Mm-hmm.
there's overlap. But I really am enjoying this work because we need equal pay, we need paid maternity leave, and paid paternity leave, but parental leave. And actually, we're making a lot of progress, but obviously, we're not where we need to be, and certainly in the U.S., we're not where we need to be. So this is a lot of what I work on, and I support a number of different organizations that help women and women entrepreneurs and all these types of things. I mean, I can elaborate. There's a lot there that our foundation is doing, but it's such important work, and so it's very gratifying.
Is there a possibility for our audience, if they are interested in supporting your foundation and the cause that you're championing?
Oh, well, sure. I mean, one way it would be great is if they are just getting involved in some way, volunteering or sharing their knowledge, because obviously it's not just money, and a lot of people aren't in a position to give money, but their time, their expertise is so valued. And I'm a big believer in that because that's the part. I mean, sure, there's writing the check, but not everyone can do that. And so, yes, absolutely. Working with some of the organizations would be wonderful. So they can reach out to me. I would love that.
Excellent. And for our audience, you can reach out to Liz Elting on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. And you can Google the foundation as well, and you can find out a little bit more information on how to get a hold of the foundation and contact them and support them. And you're absolutely correct. Money is not everything nowadays. Time is more valuable than money. If people can volunteer their time and their expertise, their advice, etc., on how to fix things or how to get involved in causes that can, elevate and support the issues that you're looking to resolve, that'll be perfect. That'll be excellent. One of the other items as we come to the closing, we still have about a few minutes here to cover. What is your advice, Liz, from what you've learned through your journey to, it doesn't matter who, young individuals who are going into business now, similar life stage when you got into business, and also on the exit side, because you must have some advice on maybe know when to exit. I guess we're not married to the business to the point of until death do us part in some cases.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a really interesting question on when to exit. It's so hard to know the right time to exit. It's interesting. You meet a lot of entrepreneurs now. They're all about raising money, right? Venture capital, and then selling in 3 to 5 years for a lot of money, and then doing something else, which it's obviously not. It's not the route I took. But the answer is, it's a great question when to exit. I think for me, it ended up being the perfect time. But I guess it's if you have a certain goal with your company, whether it's to be the largest in the industry or to make the company worth a certain amount of money, or just to have offices in certain places, or just a specific goal, then that can be a great time to do it. I mean, I try to find ways to kind of tricks to know when, but also I guess if you get to the point where, while it was at one point your dream and your passion and your dream and your goal, and then you created what you thought was your dream company, and then for whatever reason it things change and you're not getting the gratification that you did, and maybe you've made a certain amount of money and you think to yourself, okay, money is lovely, but there's a threshold number you need, and then it's about being happy outside of work, and you're not necessarily getting that happiness at work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be the time to do it. And I think I definitely got to that point. I had more things on my bucket list that I wanted to do, like starting the foundation, and now I can really concentrate on women and the causes. And I didn't mention that a big part of what we do is fund scholarships for women, because you did ask about women, and I think education is the great equalizer along with entrepreneurship. And so funding both education and entrepreneurship is wonderful. But sorry, back to the question that you asked, help supporting other people, women, marginalized communities, people who haven't had the good fortune that I've had, was definitely something I wanted to do. So the timing was good for me. But yes, things on your bucket list, as I said, that you haven't gotten to, that can be a reason to exit your company. And of course, if you think the industry is at a time when
inflection points, etc.
it's an inflection point, it could be a good time to sell, and then you can always, if you miss it, go start another company that is doing something different. You still have your network. And I think one of the things I've learned through this journey is networks are more important than ever. I mean, when we started TransPerfect, I had no network whatsoever. I didn't know a soul. I didn't know a client, nothing. But now, it's a huge part of the whole thing. And that's how I feel business gets done, in a way that even more so. And it's necessary, those connections, even more so. So anyway, the point is, you can always sell. And then if you're not happy that you sold, you can always start another company.
Yeah. And obviously there's, as you mentioned earlier, there's thousands of companies in our localization industry that are owned by, entrepreneurs or linguists, that they started something and it mushroomed a little bit and became a little bit of a company, etc. So the idea is that when you start something new, I don't think everybody is on the same wavelength in terms of their thinking. And when you start something new, start a new company, they're not thinking, as I'm starting my company, how to sell it. They're starting a company as if they're owning it forever.
Yes.
And that's, I feel like at the beginning it's fine as an attitude, as a philosophy, because you need to build it, you need to passion, you need to be all in on this one. But you always have to have in mind that this business that you're building, it's got a life cycle of its own. It's got to start, it's got to hand it over to somebody, or something else in the books for it. But it's not the idea of owning a company for the rest of our lives, some cases. So in
No,
some cases,
that's a really good point for a couple of reasons. One of the things I learned is some people are great entrepreneurs, great at starting businesses, launching businesses, and getting them off the ground and taking them to a certain size. But does that mean they're great CEOs for the long haul once the company gets to a certain size? Or even that's what their passion is. Maybe that's not the part of it that they love so much. I recently met someone who, in a different industry, he was an architect, and he had a firm with 50 people, which, it's very hard to get to a 50-person architectural firm. And he got to the point where he said, okay, I built it. It was exciting. I got to a point where it was worth a certain amount, and I sold it. And now this man is 87 years old, and he is a sole practitioner architect. He decided, I loved the architecture, but being an architect, but I didn't love running a business once it got to that 50-person point. And now I'm back pursuing my passion again. And I do it for the love of the craft or the industry.
That's right.
To running the company. So that could be a reason to stop as well.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head when you said, the idea creator or the idea owner may not be necessarily, the top HR person or the top IT person or the CFO or the CEO of the company. You got to figure out where you fit in that puzzle. What is your core expertise, and how can you make use of that core expertise to drive the business forward? And not necessarily, in some cases, running the company. Maybe somebody else can run it better. So.
Absolutely.
And there's many examples of this. I mean, Microsoft, etc. They all figure out at some point the owner of the idea may not be the person to take it, to lead it for the future, etc. So
that's right. I couldn't agree more with that.
So coming on to the end here, I really want to thank you for being part of this conversation, Liz. I really appreciate it. And thanks for joining me. For those who have not yet, looked up Dream Big and Win, a book by Liz Elting, I encourage you to look it up on Amazon. I got it from Amazon, but you can buy it from anywhere, I'm assuming. Multiple places to buy the book. It's a great book from my first readings. And I thank Liz for writing the book, sharing her experiences with all of us. I appreciate you coming online with me this morning. Sorry about the bit of a hiccup we had here, but we'll edit that out. And we'll make the episode, as usual, good episodes to be shared with everybody else. So thanks, Liz. Any final thoughts before we adjourn?
Oh, well, this was such a wonderful conversation, Robin. I loved speaking with you. It's, this is where my passion is, where my heart is. And it's really fun for me to kind of feel like I'm back in the industry for a moment. So I've just loved this conversation so much. I would love to have another one at some point. And I just wish everybody who's listening the very best. If you're in the localization industry, what a wonderful place to be. I mean, the talent, the heart that's in it. It's just, and the change you're making in the world is fabulous. And I'm just such a believer. So yeah, keep going in there, doing your thing, dreaming big and winning.
Thank you, Liz. On behalf of the audience, on behalf of our listeners, thanks so much for joining me this morning. And to our audience, if you like what we do here, if you like the content that we're providing to everybody, please like, share, and comment on this content. We appreciate your support. Thanks so much. Until next episode, this is Robin Ayub signing off.